history in the maritime industry, a Filipino professor is now at the helm of the World Maritime University, a global center of excellence for maritime and ocean education, research, and training. Professor Max Mejia is the first Filipino and Asian, mind you, to lead the esteemed university, which is based in Malmo, Sweden. Professor Mejia is joining us right now all the way from Malmo. Good morning, Professor. Glad you could join us.
Good morning, Paolo. Thank you very much for inviting me to your show.
It's a pleasure. First of all, congratulations, I think, are in order, Professor. Well done. Professor, it was earlier this year when you were announced as the new president of WMU, but you just officially assumed your post yesterday, June 29th. Did it feel any different waking up and actually being officially at the helms? How has the transition been so far, sir?
Yes, transition was really smooth, I should say. I had a very close working relationship with my predecessor, Dr. Cleopatra Dumbia Henry. And from day one, as soon as the announcement was made in late February, she really included me in as many of the meetings as she could, and involved me in a lot of her decision-making processes, and really it was very inclusive and wanted to prepare me for taking over the job, the position yesterday.
Well, now that you are officially at the helm, you know, I think each term, under each president will have its own brand, its own flavor. What would you like your term as president for WMU to be remembered as?
Yes, thanks. Well, I'm of course quite fortunate that my predecessor is leaving a university that is in a good financial situation, and the highest rates of enrollment, as well as the highest level of staffing. So I'm building on those gains and achievements. But the hallmark of my presidency, I would like to be in terms of staff welfare and well-being, gender equality, and a diversified financial resource base for the university.
Fantastic. Professor, you yourself graduated from WMU, and prior to becoming president, as you've mentioned, you've already held several positions at the university leading up to you taking the reins, including head of the PhD program and head of the maritime law and policy specialization. Here in the Philippines, you also headed the Maritime Industry Authority, or Marina, from 2013 to 2016, I understand. All of these experiences really obviously are building blocks as you take on a much broader role as the president of MWU. Are there any specific projects you mentioned how you would like your tenure to be remembered as, but are there any specific areas or projects that you want to focus on in terms of curriculum, in terms of the academic side?
Yes. I think the combination and mix of my academic studies, research, teaching, and experience, of course, draw me closer to the focus on policy, and that's really looking at how interests, problems, challenges, and opportunities rise from the public consciousness into the top levels of the political agenda, and going from there, how policy agenda items turn into policy formulation, and then implementation, and then towards the evaluation and analysis of policy, in order to then come up with lessons learned to improve policy, and then ensure that the implementation of standards, laws, and regulations are made in an optimal manner.
Right, Professor. In the context of the Philippines being recognized as one of the, or probably the best at providing, top maritime people who work in the maritime field, seafarers, mariners, and such. How do we describe our local maritime industry now, and even more? In terms of President Bongbong Marcos saying that during the Philippine Maritime Industry Summit earlier this year, he committed to making the maritime sector a priority. How will you sort of tie into that, and how do we make the Philippine maritime industry prosper even more and be even more competitive on the global scale?
Yes, for me, it's a great relief and assurance that the administration of President Marcos is dedicated to strengthening the maritime industry. It's kind of like a pivot back to the maritime industry that we haven't really seen in the last 6 to 7 years. And there are many indicators that bode well for our maritime industry. Earlier, the European Maritime Safety Agency and the European Commission has granted a renewal of the recognition of Philippine seafarer certificates. This strengthens our position as a source of seafarers, particularly for European flagged vessels. So back to the other part of your question, what do we need to do in order to ensure a continued strengthening of the maritime industry in the Philippines? Well, it goes back to giving full and complete effect to international standards that are agreed upon at the International Maritime Organization, which is based in London, which happens to also be the mother organization of the World Maritime University. And in order to do this, the Philippines has to look at different obligations that it has under international maritime law and ensure that these are implemented properly through Philippine local legislation, rules and regulations, and the monitoring of the compliance of these standards are made in a professional manner, regular and professional manner.
Right, very well said, Professor. I can't tell you how proud we are of what you've achieved and what you will continue to achieve, and it's fantastic to have a Filipino really at the helm of such a prestigious position. Thank you once again, Professor Mejia, for joining us here on New Day. Congratulations, sir.